Good morning, gentlemen. We are a small select group this morning. There's an awful lot going on in the House, but some of our colleagues will be joining us during the course of the session. It'd be helpful if, just for the record, you'd be kind enough to introduce yourselves.
Good morning, I'm Dan Hurd. I'm Capita's Market Director for Science, and throughout the period that we've been looking at FERA, I've been focusing specifically on the scientific aspects of the FERA project, particularly the relationship with science partners such as Newcastle University.
Good morning, Chris Sellers, Executive Director at Capita, and my responsibility is in the setting up and creation of our new public-private partnerships.
Yes, good morning, I'm Professor Robert Edwards and I'm Head of the School of Agriculture, Food and Rural Development at Newcastle University.
Okay. In the ministerial statement that was made by Elizabeth Truss on the 11th of February, the last sentence says it is intended that the new joint venture will commence operating on the 1st of April. Is there any doubt in your minds whether it will happen? Is it a done deal now?
I'm probably best to answer that one. As with all procurements, they're never done until the lawyers say they're absolutely done. We've agreed all principles with DEFRA. It's just a matter of dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and that is in progress as we speak. And we have no reason to believe that we won't be able to hit those timelines, but it wouldn't be for me to say for sure.
And the nature of that deal will be in the public domain?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
And therefore there is nothing around the deal that we want to discuss today that you would regard as commercial in confidence?
Only that we are still in a formal procurement process because the contract has not yet been signed. But we'll be as helpful as we can to the committee and being as open as we possibly can.
Okay. Can I ask you, Mr. Sellers, why did you want to get involved in this joint venture with FERA?
Okay, so the scientific capability of FERA in the agri-food sector is undoubted and is unchallenged. The more that we looked at the capabilities that are there, the more excited we got because we didn't believe those capabilities were being maximised in terms of maximising the impact they could have in terms of benefit to the public and to the environment. And the reasons around that in its current form, there are certain constraints placed on FERA, such as only 1 year view on any funding that is available to them, making it difficult to make longer term funding arrangements. They are not able to make speculative investment in science, so any science that they do needs to be fully funded at point of go ahead. And also they're not able to invest in things like marketing and sales skills because that's not part of their scientific remit. Therefore, as we looked at that, the joint venture that DEFRA came forward and proposed actually looked really exciting to us because we felt it was an opportunity to create a joint venture with complementary skills from ourselves, from the people that already run the FERA organisation, and also people like Newcastle University, so that we could create a true end-to-end from science on the bench right the way through to practical application in the field.
So this is the DEFRA proposition, and you responded to this proposition. So how did you end up in partnership with Newcastle?
Well, Dan, that's probably best for you to answer that one.
Well, we actually went around the country speaking to a large number of universities and other research institutes to find the sort of most complementary fit for the expertise that's already in FERA. So we were looking, for example, at institutions which had complementary capabilities. So Newcastle University has got experimental farms at Cockle Park and Nafferton, which are actually a really good fit with FERA's science. But there are a couple of other things as well that we wanted to look for in a science partner. One of those was an organisation which didn't want to kind of take control of FERA's science strategy. It's really important that FERA's science strategy is its own and remains its own. and Newcastle University were very clear about that. They were also very clear that they didn't want to kind of shut down the partnerships here. They saw, and Rob may want to say more about this, but Newcastle saw themselves as a kind of a gateway to the wider research base through the N8 group of universities and others. And the final point actually is that we were looking for a partner who, where this was more than just words. And actually, Newcastle University was willing to make a significant investment, actually, of £4.5 million into a joint institute, which we think will bring significant opportunities for FERA to actually grow its science capability.
Now, we know, because it's well documented, of Newcastle's prowess in certain scientific disciplines. Indeed, the House of Lords were debating part of this last night, different field. But what we don't know about is what Capita brings to the table in terms of science. We understand your business skills. What do you bring to the table in terms of science?
Well, Capita doesn't actually deliver large-scale scientific operations at the moment. We've made that very clear all the way through. But it's actually the joint venture that will be delivering FERA, that we're running FERA. So the joint venture is a combination of the scientists that are already there, the management team that is already running FERA, who clearly have the skills and capability to deliver science, but coupled with the input from Newcastle University, then suddenly you've got a joint venture which actually does have the skills and capability. And one final really important point for me is that DEFRA are still a joint venture partner in the proposed model going forwards. And so people like Nick Joycey and Professor Ian Boyd are actually on the board. And that board actually has to sign off and agree the science strategy for FERA. So we believe that the joint venture collectively has all the scientific skills, as well as the business skills and the academic skills to make this work.
Well, obviously this committee is interested in ensuring that the UK's science base is properly protected in deals like this. There have been examples in the past where disposals of government assets have resulted in damage being done to the science base. So the questions we're asking today are in that context. So if I can finally ask you, in the contract notice it states that the service contract is up to 10 years. Is there scope for Capita to sell all or part of its shares in the joint venture before that 10 years is up?
No, there's an important characteristic of this relationship, which is that the joint venture actually goes on forever, isn't constrained by the 10 years, okay? That's the nature of the joint venture. The 10 years that you refer to is to do with what's called the long-term service agreement, which is between FERA and DEFRA to provide the services that are critical to DEFRA. That is in the first 5 years are fully agreed and committed to, and it is DEFRA's gift to extend for a further 5 years, hence the 10 years of that agreement. I guess the important point from Capita's point of view on this is that this business doesn't work without the investment in science. The whole nature of FERA as a business proposition actually is that it's got its differentiation is the quality and the areas of competence of its science. And that is why in the agreement that we've got with DEFRA and the contracted agreement, we've committed not only to the upfront payment to DEFRA, which is significant, but also to £10 million of investment in the scientific capability within FERA. And that is a contracted and committed proposal.
So you see yourself as in it for the long haul?
Oh, absolutely right. To be honest with you, there's no way we'd put that amount of money up front in any kind of deal if we weren't in this for the long haul. This is a long-term business venture for us.
Stephen.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to explore this service agreement, if I may, a little bit. and work out what the split between, how the priorities are going to work between government and commercial work. I understand that the bee plant and GM inspectorate have already transferred back to DEFRA. Is that correct?
So, yeah, so you're absolutely right. The joint venture, the scope of the joint venture won't be the same as FERA historically. It's a bit smaller. So Plant and Bee Health Inspectorate, GM Inspectorate and the Government Decontamination Service will remain with government.
Okay. So can you expand on that? What are the core functions and the core science that will be in the new venture? And what will remain in FERA and what will go back to DEFRA, so that we can have an understanding of what your role will be?
So those functions that are going back are primarily the regulatory functions. The functions that are remaining in FERA are all their 7 main areas of science, so food quality and safety, the Centre for Chemical Safety and Stewardship, proficiency testing, those sorts of things. So all those 7 areas of kind of core capability, primarily around food and plant health, they'll all remain within FERA.
Okay. So obviously, as part of this joint venture, you want to also offer your services, FERA services, outside of just government. You've already talked about a service level agreement between yourselves and government. How will you allocate priority? What will be the main driver? Your functions and services to government, or your wish to expand and commercialise services outside of government?
I'll start on that one. Our priority is to government. That is the prime. It is the prime client of FERA and will remain to be that for the foreseeable future. That is the whole purpose of the long-term service agreement that is agreed now up front before the joint venture even kicks off. For example, as part of that, the whole emergency response capability is contracted. So there are 46 scientists who are ring-fenced as part of this agreement, so that in the event of an emergency, that response capability is there, is maintained there, and is actually probably more clearly documented as now being there and available 24/7 than it's ever been.
Okay. All right, so you do not see there, or cannot envisage a point at which you would have to choose between providing emergency support to government over and above any commercial activities you may have.
Absolutely right. The priorities are very, very clear.
Okay, so the issue of whether or not you would require compensation for switching more resources to supporting government is not. It's not an issue.
It's already dealt with.
It's already dealt with. Okay, and so there is, from our point of view, as we're obviously worried about how government will use these services. As much as you can, I think what you've said is that the emergency response will be as robust, if not more robust than it is now, because it will be protected, right, and that we should have nothing to worry about from this.
Absolutely right.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay.
Graham.
You've already answered a number of the questions I was going to ask, but can you tell me what the Institute will do that FERA doesn't do at the present time?
Rob, do you want to?
Yeah, I think FERA's skills are very complementary to those of agriculture, food and rural development in Newcastle. So, for example, FERA has a capacity in plant health, whereas we have a School of Agriculture. Actually, the two are very closely aligned with one another, but the statutory services of FERA currently are largely directed at non-agricultural produce. So there's a real match there between what we're trying to do in agriculture and what FERA is doing in plant health. Similarly, on the food side, FERA's expertise lies in food safety, and at Newcastle we have an expertise in nutrition. Again, they're the two sides of a coin. So I can see that it's a very good capability match between two organisations and strengthens translational science, which is what we're really interested in, taking basic science all the way through to innovation and new product development across the agri-food chain.
Could I just add?
Yeah, I mean, just certainly come in. I understand that. That was very similar to the first answer that was given, but what will the Institute be doing extra? That's what I'm trying to get at.
I think one of the things that we think the Institute will uniquely bring, actually, is it will enable FERA scientists to have access to forms of science funding that otherwise they wouldn't be eligible for. So Research Council funding, for example, they'll be able to access through the Institute, which otherwise they wouldn't be able to, which will mean obviously that FERA's science capability can grow as it takes advantage of that. It's not just Research Council actually, you've got Innovate UK and EU funding as well, which some of which FERA's already able to access, but I think kind of in combination with Newcastle University, their combined efforts will actually make them better able in certain circumstances to be successful in bidding for EU money. So.
Forgive me for being suspicious. Is the driver then primarily that you can get access to more easily and to more funding streams, or is it to extend the science base?
I think Research Council funding actually helps to build the research capability in FERA. It's much more directed at basic science and basic skills, so I think it really underpins the capability of the future of FERA. And there's also an element as well of joint training of postgraduate students to help effectively refresh the skills base within FERA as well. So I think there's a bit of a double advantage there about getting closer to the world of research councils and the world of basic research.
Thanks. What are the governance arrangements going to be? Are the government going to be involved in the controlling structures?
Are you referring specifically to the governance of the Institute or of the joint venture?
The Institute.
So the Institute will be governed by a board which will have equal numbers of members from the joint venture and from Newcastle University. And so given that DEFRA will be a partner in the joint venture, they will be able to feed into the governance of the Institute through that.
Will they have a person represented on the board?
The board will be made. The board will be made up of Newcastle University and FERA staff. So, insofar as FERA staff report to both Capita and DEFRA in the joint venture, that's the route that they'll have in.
Is that a long way of saying no?
The formal board membership has to be between the joint venture and Newcastle University for the Institute. So if it happens that the best person from the joint venture is a government employee, and it might be Professor Boyd, for example, then he could sit on that as well. There's no restrictions from government, but they will be representing the joint venture.
But nor is there any constitutional position that says the government must be represented on the board?
Well, they are in the sense that the joint venture is represented on the board,
right,
and they are part of the joint venture.
I think I understand that. Can we move on to the finance? You said earlier that Newcastle University were putting in £4.5 million. In the announcement to the London Stock Exchange, Capita said that they would be purchasing 75% of FERA for £20 million. Yet the government talked about £14.5 million of additional funding. Can you explain those
Yes, I
figures?
can explain those figures, yeah, absolutely. So the £20 million is a payment from Capita to DEFRA for the purchase of 75% of the joint venture. Okay? The £14.5 million investment into FERA and the Institute is the £4.5 million from Newcastle University and a further £10 million from Capita.
Right.
So that's the 14.5.
Right. Will the partnership continue to undertake routine scientific work that's in the public interest, but in all probability, one can never judge what will happen when you're doing research, I understand that, in all probability won't be profitable?
Well, the long-term service agreement between the joint venture and FERA and DEFRA as a customer protects a whole range of services that FERA currently provides to government. and they're already kind of costed into that agreement. So the services that FERA currently provides are protected under that agreement.
Is that list in the public domain?
Sorry, could you?
Is that list of services in the public domain? If not, why not?
I don't know whether it is, because it's still prior to contract signature, but I can check that and come back to you.
Will it be when the contracts are signed?
As far as I'm concerned, it will be.
Just final question. Do you anticipate that non-commercial public interest work will be charged at a higher rate than it is at the present time?
The actual service agreements that we are committing to right now protect pricing for government from all.
So there'll be no change in the pricing structure?
In fact, there's a 20% reduction in fees for the services already committed. So there are savings to DEFRA beyond the investment that we're making, which are committed, even though we're protecting the services they now get.
Thank you.
Stephen.
Thank you, Chairman. If I could, I'd just like to turn a little bit to probably what is the most important part of the business, which will be the staff, whatever their role, and everyone is concerned about change. Change is unsettling for all. Now, at the start of this new venture, what should the employees expect? Are they leaving one organisation and joining a new one? Are they transferring? What are the arrangements for them?
Okay, I'll answer that one. The staff will transfer to Capita as part of this arrangement.
Sorry, transfer to?
They'll transfer to Capita.
To Capita.
As part of this arrangement. And we've talked to all the staff about that, and we're working with Prospect on site, have been for the last 2 weeks since the announcement, to talk through all of that. In terms of the, when we talked to staff when we managed to get them all assembled 2 weeks ago, which could only happen post preferred bidder announcement, the messages were very clear that we are investing in the science, that the number of science jobs will grow, that we are planning on an extra 50 jobs at Sandhutton, and we've been very open about that, and that is part of the plans submitted to DEFRA. We've also been very clear that there are elements of the back office support services at FERA which frankly have been underinvested in for the last few years. So there isn't a robust finance system, there isn't a robust project management system, and there isn't a robust, in fact there is no customer relationship management type capability there, which for a science organisation that is managing a large number of different customers actually hinders the science and the application of that science. So we will be making those investments in the first 12 months, and it is possible from that, and we've been very open about that, there are certain back office roles which will not be required in the same way, but that is being worked through with Prospect.
So is not be required in the same way indicating that those roles will be removed and different people will be brought in, or will existing staff be able to transfer into roles? Because I think you're saying you need to improve the back office.
We do.
But are you also saying at the same time there may be an overall a smaller head count?
So there may well be a smaller head count, that is possible in the back office, but we expect the staff there to absolutely to be able to do the roles that will remain.
Okay. You were very clear about the science function, that will be an extra 50, but we can't really say at the moment what the head count in the back office will be in 12 months' time.
I can't say that.
Are there other areas where you'll be trying to make efficiency savings?
There isn't, to be quite honest, because the plans are all about growth. Right. So this is all about attracting new work and new part of which is upfront investment from us to pump prime all of that.
Yeah.
But the whole point of this is that the whole business hinges on great science and the areas of competence that FERA continue to develop, because that's what gives you differentiation in the marketplace.
Okay, and that market is pretty robust at the moment, so there's plenty of work for you to go and out and find.
It's not only robust, it's growing fast. I mean, if you think about the challenges of rising population and climate change, that is exactly where FERA play. Okay. And our excitement about this is that actually at the moment they could play on a bigger stage than they do today.
Right, okay. And is that just within the UK, or do you see yourself having a role
No, this is definitely an international move.
Okay, fine. So if it's an international role, is there anything in the joint service agreements that means that you have to keep the research facilities in the UK, or can you move them wherever you choose?
We've been very clear that Sand Hutton is where we are going to concentrate and base this. And it's a very simple fact as much as anything. I mean, it's a business decision as much as any decision, because the business relies on those people.
Yes.
Those people have lived there for 20 years since they relocated from CSL, and that is where the heart of it is. There's actually, with York University and the science park there as well, and Newcastle not too far up the road, we're getting a real great cluster actually in that area of the country of really good agri-tech scientists, which is fantastic. That's what makes the business.
I mean, obviously you sound very excited about this, and
We are.
Yeah, I can see that. Is that excitement shared across the whole organisation? If you're honest, everyone sees this as a bright new future.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Jim.
Well, just briefly, while we've got the people from Capita here, because they won't be with us in the second panel, how was the? Do you know how the chief executive of FERA was selected?
Sorry, how was the chief
The
executive?
chief executive of FERA.
Well, the chief executive of FERA will be the existing chief executive of FERA, who is Hilary Aldridge.
Indeed, Hilary Aldridge. Capita, as I recall, was founded by Mr. Rod Aldridge. Is there any connection in
There's
there?
no connection that I'm aware of at all. No.
Okay.
And that decision was made by DEFRA way ahead of us being involved.
Righty-ho. Thanks very much.
Stephen.
Just a quick clarification. When you're talking about the employees moving over, you said there would be Capita employees. Would there be Capita employees? Would there be employees of the new joint venture?
There will be Capita employees, but they retain all their terms and conditions from that they currently hold.
Okay, so in the event of any back office job losses, there would be opportunities to transfer within Capita, would there, rather than...
Absolutely right. We employ best part of 11,000 people in that area. And we've already, again, made a commitment that any opportunities at any of our other sites around there will be open for any FERA opportunity, for FERA employees if they so wish. But our primary focus is on getting FERA on.
You've put a very positive view forward of these changes. When you were discussing it and debating it and deciding to go this way, can you tell us what you thought were the threats and the downsides?
I think the threats and the downside to me were whether we could win the hearts and minds of the scientists. Because without the scientists, without investment in future science, this doesn't stack up. So a lot of our research was actually around gaining that insight around the passion and commitment of these scientists. And having met them, having interacted with them, having understood some of the constraints they now feel that we can take away as part of this joint venture, we've got no concerns around that anymore at all.
And that view is also held in the university, I take.
Yeah, I think from the perspective of the university link, it's a really important one for the staff at FERA, because they see that as, again, a strengthening of the science and the investment and going forward and basically expanding the science operation as opposed to contracting it.
Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. It's really interesting. Lord de Mauley is now going to join us. Lord de Mauley, thank you very much for joining us again. I think for the last time in this Parliament, but you never know. This is an interesting development, and I think you heard me say our principal interest is to ensure that UK science is properly protected in this deal. Firstly, can I just test the water as I did with the first panel? In the ministerial statement of the 11th of February, it says it's intended that the new joint venture will commence on the 1st of April. Do you think that is now a certainty? Or?
I think It's certainly our firm intention. I think, if anything, it is looking more likely rather than less likely. But of course, as your previous witnesses indicated, nothing is certain until it is certain.
In the ministerial statement, there was reference to freeing FERA from public sector constraints. Now, I think most members of this committee will understand what's meant by that phrase, but perhaps for the record you could explain what you think it means.
Yes, of course. I think certainly those constraints include three things. One is the ability to market your services proactively. Another is to pay your staff at the market rate. And a third is to finance your business, for example, through borrowings, which is obviously that much more difficult in the public sector. And the fourth, your previous witnesses mentioned access to Research Council funding. That's a third thing in this specific instance.
And any such borrowing presumably would be outside of PSBR?
Correct.
So, leaving aside aspects like that, obviously the Treasury have close interest in points like my last one. What are the problems with the current model?
FERA has a turnover of about £40 million and it has about 550 staff. Income from public bodies in 2013-14 represented about 66% of that, with 18% coming from commercial customers. FERA's revenue from the UK government is expected to fall over the next few years, largely from ongoing pressures on departmental budgets. And a business review, in fact in 2011, highlighted FERA's success in growing commercial income and noted that there was potential to grow it. But also at the same time, we were moving into a situation where FERA was loss-making and under government ownership, it was difficult to see it finding its way out of that situation.
In the government statement, there's the sort of laudable goal of that the new joint venture would protect and enhance FERA's science capabilities. We all applaud that. But where's the evidence? How's that going to be achieved?
We share your imperative that we should protect and enhance government science. And I think we're doing it in three ways. First, by choosing the right partner. Second, by ourselves remaining a part owner. And third, in the science we pay for as a customer of FERA. So, first of all, in terms of choosing the right partner, we've used a comprehensive procurement exercise, which I can explain to you if you wish, to find a partner with a science strategy aligned with the high standards and reputation of FERA's scientific capability and our ambition for its science. And our ambition is for it to provide innovative, relevant and high-quality science to help meet our fundamental need for sustainable long-term access to innovative science. So we asked each bidder for its science strategy for FERA, and we evaluated this on its alignment with our ambition. Capita's bid scored highly, in particular because of its proposal for a joint research institute with Newcastle, which you've heard of, which is part of the Russell Group, and currently ranked 5th in the country for the number of knowledge transfer partnerships. Moving on to remaining ourselves a part owner, as a minority shareholder, we clearly will be at arm's length to allow the joint venture the freedom to act commercially, but we'll still have influence through our 25% holding and, importantly, through our 2 directors on the board, which will be our Chief Scientific Advisor, Professor Ian Boyd, and our Director General responsible for Animal and Plant Health, Nick Joycey. And they will have a role in providing support and challenge around the science strategy and so the science direction in the joint venture. And then the third thing, by specifying what we need as a customer. We can protect our interests by specifying and paying for the science and science capability we need through the long-term service agreement, and ensuring we get what we want through proper contract management.
The board to which you referred is the joint venture board.
Yes.
So we'll come back later on to explore more about the institution. It's been a long process. Originally, I think the government announced that it was all supposed to be sewn up by the end of last year. What are the reasons for delays?
I think that it's been important to get it right, and we, as I referred to earlier, we've gone through an extensive pre-procurement exercise, and I have to say from my experience in the private sector, where my business for 20 years was doing these sorts of deals, I was very satisfied that it was very professionally and thoroughly done. I'm sure you would make the point to me that we shouldn't rush these things, and I think in the circumstances it's been very professionally done, and I'm very satisfied with the result.
Stephen.
Thank you. This committee has previously expressed concerns about the way the Forensic Science Service was disposed of, I suppose, for a better description. And although we were led to believe there was some strategy behind that, it actually, when we scratched the surface a little bit more and dug a little bit deeper, we discovered there really wasn't. So although you've said there is a strategy, can you just expand on what it is in terms of the regulation, innovation and the commercialisation of FERA that will make sure that we're not in a tricky place in a year's time or 2 years' time?
I absolutely understand the concern, and it might help if I explain how we use the experience we gained from previous deals in steering ourselves through this course. And in fact, I mean, you mentioned the Forensic Science Service quite rightly. We were, of course, conscious of the failure of that, where concerns were raised about the maturity of the forensic market and the Forensic Science Service moved to a GovCo. I think perhaps the difference is that FERA already operates in a commercial marketplace, so it can take advantage of the greater commercial opportunities from a joint venture. And there were others that we looked at, like the National Physical Laboratory, which was a government-owned, contractor-operated model, and then its recent move to a new partnership arrangement with two universities, Strathclyde and Surrey. And that helped us think through how to put the quality and sustainability of the science at the heart of the deal. We were also conscious of the conclusions of the NAO inquiry into the kinetic privatisation. And reflecting that, the management of FERA were kept at a distance from the proposition and negotiations, and we included a super profits clause to take a cut back for government if the joint venture becomes successful. And there were a number of other situations which we took into account in steering ourselves through these negotiations. We have done that extremely carefully.
Okay. One of our concerns around the way the Forensic Science Service was dealt with was the lack of involvement of the Chief Scientific Advisor. I think it's fair to say almost all the way through the process. Can you reassure the committee that the science, research is in the name of the organisation, was at the heart and centre of this, and that the Chief Scientific Advisor was involved all the way through?
I absolutely can. He and I talk regularly about a whole range of DEFRA matters, as you can imagine, including FERA. He and I have been up there several times, and we have both been kept thoroughly involved in the process.
Okay, thank you very much. If I can, I'd just like to move on to the area of how to ensuring that the government still maintains the function. We heard from maintains the benefits of FERA. We heard from the first panel there is a service level agreement between the two sides. Are you confident that the government's requirements will always be met above all else?
Yes, I am. Yes. I mean, I think it's important to say that there's a clear and comprehensive contractual process to address any issues of poor delivery. I mean, one has to think of the worst and plan for them. So first of all, there's a series of regular meetings which go on at a senior level to monitor progress. If a problem arises, it'll initially be handled at the level of the service recipient, plant health, veterinary medical directorate, or wherever. If a failure is identified, financial consequences can kick in quite quickly. Both sides will do their best to fix the failure. 3 successive failures will trigger an urgent meeting within a week of the third failure. I'm going into a bit of detail, but I hope it's helpful to you to understand the consequences. Things can be escalated further, including an emergency meeting which involves looking for a rectification plan and is triggered by a series of breaches. And ultimately, the call-off in question can be terminated, and even in extremis, the framework. So the core capability in the joint venture, which DEFRA is committed to fund, would in those circumstances ultimately return to government, ensuring that the vital skills would not be lost.
Okay. So that's if there is sort of an ongoing, there's a breakdown in the relationship, and the new organisation isn't providing ongoing services in the way you want. What happens in an emergency if you suddenly need all those resources directed in one particular area? How will you make sure that DEFRA's requirements are met above all else?
Yes. Well, responding to incidents and emergencies will continue to be of utmost importance, and Capita completely understands that. They understand their responsibilities, and we are contractually assured that as now, work to deal with emerging issues will be given the highest priority. In the short term, they will comply with our existing contingency and emergency requirements, and they're required to maintain short notice capacity. They're working on a new contingency plan which will be more encompassing, and we're working with them, and that will be required to be in place within 90 days of when the contract takes effect. And it'll set out the response we expect within the new contractual relationship. And we also have a critical performance indicator covering incidents and emergencies, failure of which leads to significant financial reimbursement and triggers additional performance monitoring.
Okay. And does it anywhere in the contract actually stipulate categorically that government work needs to take priority over other commercial clients?
Well, I think it is essentially yes, because it is done in the way that I've described,
yes.
which says those are absolutely to be treated as there can be no failure.
Yes. they're slightly different. I mean, I completely agree. It does say there's it doesn't actually stipulate, we will let everything else down before we let you down.
Well, I think that is the effect of it. I mean, our intention in the negotiations has been essentially to that situation pertains.
All right. And you're confident, and your advisors are confident that that is the case?
I am very confident that they will not let us down.
Okay, good. Well, thank you for that. As I said to the previous panel, the biggest asset the new organisation will have will be its staff, and obviously everyone finds change unsettling. Since the announcement, has FERA had problems with recruiting and retaining staff?
The staff have been kept thoroughly informed throughout the process, actually, and indeed, compared to a private sector process, which I'm more familiar with, I would say this has been one of the more open ones I've encountered. And indeed, staff have reacted extremely positively to this. I don't have the up-to-the-minute answer to the question you're asking, but I'm not aware of any problem.
You're not?
No.
Right, okay, so you haven't therefore taken any steps to prevent the loss of skilled and experienced staff because you're not aware that there has been a problem with that?
The impression we get is that, if anything, it is in the positive direction.
So,
In other words,
because of the announcement, because of the excitement around
it's become a more attractive place.
Okay, all right. Well, I mean, that is obviously that is good, and let's hope that there is this bright future for the new organisation. I'm sure we all wish that. Sorry, I'm not trying to sound sarcastic in any way. Now, obviously, we heard from the first panel, and you heard it too. There will be some changes in the back office function. Have those changes and the potential reduction in headcount been discussed up front? Do they form part of the negotiations, that there will be a reduction in staff?
I think it is probably... Nothing has been withheld, but it is quite early days for Capita to decide exactly what they are going to do. Inevitably, they're going to look to restructure the business so that they can meet their new business plan. And in particular, they will be looking to enhance operational efficiency through implementation of new and improved business support systems. One can expect this to have an impact on back office jobs, although they're committed to no job losses in the first 6 months,
yes,
to give them time to really get a feel for the business.
Is that not stipulated by the 2P agreement as well?
Certainly, everybody is subject to 2P, of course.
Yes. I think that 6 months is part of any 2P agreement. Okay. So I think in the event that, as I said, we want this to work, but in the event that it doesn't, you have contingency plans in place through the contract to bring all scientists and other staff back into and under government control?
Those that are necessary to perform whichever function it is, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Minister. Just like to ask you a couple of questions about the processes that were in place for the department to choose the partners for FERA in the future. Can you share with us the criteria that was applied to the applicants? And can you tell us a bit more about who was involved within the department for determining that criteria and going through the application process?
Can I run through the sort of procurement procedure? I think it might be helpful to the committee. The procurement for the joint venture was undertaken using the negotiated tendering procedure, and a notice was placed in the official journal of the EU on the 4th of May 2014. 43 organisations expressed an interest, of which 15 attending meetings with DEFRA as part of the market soundings exercise. 6 bidders completed a pre-qualification questionnaire, and 4 of them went through to pre-qualification to the pre-qualification stage. The deadline for bidder responses was midday on the 5th of December. Bidder responses received were opened on the 5th, and these were checked for compliance and clarifications required to enable them to be evaluated. Throughout the process, all the bidders have been treated equally and have been given the same opportunities to learn about the FERA business and tailor their bid appropriately. So there were bidder days where they were all given an equal chance to meet the FERA executive team. There were negotiation sessions. There was access to a common data room of information. The tenders were evaluated by an independent panel, all of whom had signed a non-disclosure agreement and confirmed that they didn't have conflicts of interest. And the evaluation process was undertaken in a completely fair and transparent way. And ultimately, that independent panel scored Capita with Newcastle University highest. And
on what criteria?
So the criteria would have been science, first and foremost, including ability to fulfil all of our requirements, financial, and then a range of other sort of business criteria. But I guess those were the 2 key ones.
Is there a formal list of criteria?
I can certainly let you have it. I haven't got it here. But I mean, I've given you the process we've gone through. But yes, let me let you have that afterwards, if I may.
Yes, okay, thank you. And can I just ask, was the department's chief scientific advisor involved in that process?
Yes, he was.
He was, and what was his...
Sorry, was he on the independent panel?
His deputy was on the panel, actually.
As deputy?
On the panel.
Okay.
You were asking specifically who was on the panel, the independent panel, yes.
Okay, so his deputy was, but the chief scientific advisor would be
He would be
separate.
kept closely informed.
Okay, okay. Now, you mentioned that the science ability would have been the kind of top criteria that would be used. Can you share with us any information about what information and what evidence that Capita had presented in the application process to show their capability on providing science services?
Yes. So I've described a bit about the process that was gone through, and what was really important to us, and the reason their bid scored particularly well, was because of the proposal for a joint research institute with Newcastle University. And this will help ensure the quality of Ferrer's science by rooting the organisation in the UK research base. You've heard a bit about that from the previous witnesses. The criteria we set were heavily weighted towards protection of our science and meeting our service requirements. I can tell you now that the key criteria were financial, science, and service quality. That's the one I should have added.
Okay. I just wanted to ask you did mention about applicants at a certain stage in the process having to sign a non-disclosure agreement. And it's my understanding that isn't...
I'm so sorry. Could you start the question again?
So you'd mentioned in an earlier answer to myself about applicants having to sign a non-disclosure agreement at a certain stage in the process. Can I ask why that was felt necessary?
I think I said that okay. I mean,
it's my understanding that applicants had to sign that agreement before they were allowed to view the initial information document. Is that normal practice?
Yes.
In DEFRA?
Yes, absolutely, it is.
Okay.
Yes.
So there's precedent for that to happen.
I mean, it gives the in this case the DEFRA, the government, more control over the process if we bind them to a confidentiality obligation.
Could you expand on
well,
that? Why is it?
First of all, there is some intellectual property which Ferrer owns, which it would be we don't want to give away our commercial secrets, so it would be entirely inappropriate for them to do that. That's just an example.
Okay, is there any other reasons?
I think when you're conducting a negotiation, you want to be in control of the process, and to the extent that people are permitted to talk to each other out with that can prejudice that process.
Okay.
Right. I won't repeat the question, but you were present when I asked the previous witnesses to explain the financial arrangements, the 20 million, 14.5 million,
yes.
4.5. Were you happy with their answer? Did you agree with that? And is there anything you would want to add to it?
No, I think I was happy with their answers.
Right. The governments have said that they estimate that they're committed to 15 million in the first year of the joint venture. Is that still the case?
Sorry, 15
The
million?
government is committed to spending
15 million of business?
On the joint venture.
On the services of the business?
Yeah.
Yes.
That remains the case.
Yes.
And how far into the future do you project that financial commitment?
From memory, I think we're committed for 5 years.
That's 15 million in cash terms or real terms?
I think it dropped. It declines over the 5 years. That's a pre-agreed.
I mean, if you don't have it in front of you, do you think you could send the committee?
Of course, I can.
A note on that. Can you outline to the committee how DEFRA's funding commitment to Ferrer will change over the course of the contract? with Capita?
Could I include that in the answer to the
Certainly, certainly. And with more difficulty, really, we saw things because of the market change went wrong with forensic science. What happens if there is a funding shortfall? If the budgets don't go according to plan, and there is a funding shortfall, whose responsibility is it to plug that gap?
Do you mean of government funding?
Yes. Well, no. If the financial plans of the institute and the joint venture don't work, because the world changes, doesn't it? Often.
I see.
Well, whose responsibility would it be to plug any gap?
Well, it will be for Capita's responsibility. I mean, it will be up to them as to whether they can do it from within the joint venture, or if not, they will be required to do so themselves. And I've explained to you the sort of escalation procedure for when things go wrong. And there are, first of all, there are financial penalties in there, and ultimately, if push comes to shove, the function has to be brought back into government. And I just should clarify that. I think in answer to Mr. Metcalfe earlier, I said, I explained the process for bringing staff back into government. I should say that is specific to plant health, the staff that will come back.
Sorry, it's specific to
plant health.
Right. Right. And just a final question, again the same question I asked the previous panel. When governments were discussing these proposals, what did you see as the biggest potential risks and downside in it? You know, we're bound to, in a committee like this, hear the positive case. What were the worries?
Well, I think that was one of the things that was foremost in our mind, which was why, for example, we looked at other similar government transactions which had not gone well, and we asked ourselves why, and we have written into the contract ways to obviate those. We have the contract is very clear that government science is protected. I guess the bigger question is whether the commercial upside is realised, and certainly I've explained that Ferrer is already getting 18% of its revenue from the commercial world. And we and Capita are convinced that that is a growth market. So we think the risks are on the upside there. All I can do is assure you that we have spent, perhaps the chairman mentioned the fact that it's taken a bit longer, we have spent this time in making sure that we have crossed as many I's and T's in contractual terms as we possibly can.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I just want to go back to this issue of the staff transferring back into DEFRA if necessary. You've now qualified, I think, your remarks by saying it's the plant health staff.
Yes.
What about other than animal health
yes.
and those sorts of areas?
So other services can be sought elsewhere in the market.
Right.
So our view is that it's plant health where perhaps there's, the services are more unique.
So if this all were to go wrong, and you have to always plan for
yes.
worst case scenario, and it went wrong at the same time as there was another outbreak of something like foot and mouth, you could go out and buy those services?
Well, to some extent I think you can, but I'm confident that we will be able to do it from within the joint venture.
Okay. As I say, you have to plan for the worst. That's why they're called, worst case scenarios, and we've had the National Risk Register and things.
If I may I consider that point, and I'll write to you
that's fine.
a note.
Just would. Thank you.
Yeah.
Jim. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Minister. Can I just look at R&D?
Yes.
At the moment under this. It's difficult to define from the latest annual report precisely what percentage of Ferrer's income is actually spent on R&D at the moment. Do you have any idea? There's information arriving.
But not on that particular question.
Oh, right.
I won't won't make a guess. I will write to you on that particular point.
Okay, fine. That may well then affect my second question, is how will this proportion, whatever it might be affected by the joint venture?
Yes. So, as well as providing commitments to a number of specified services, we, DEFRA, have also committed to commission a minimum level of R&D per annum as part of the service requirement, which starts at £1.5 million in year one, which is focused on delivering new science for DEFRA's policies and underpinning and improving other services. In addition to this, FERA can bid for additional funding from DEFRA and other sources. Maintaining a level of competition for R&D funding is, as you've identified, important to ensure we continue to receive the best solutions.
So, but without knowing the first figure, of course, you don't know whether that's more or less than is currently being spent, do you?
I think I'm going to have to write you.
Right. Okay, I look forward to that. What steps is the Department taking to ensure that Capita continues to invest in R&D and maintain FERA's research capabilities?
Well, in addition to the joint venture itself, which I've just described, but which we'll come back to, I think the Joint Research Institute is perhaps the entity which is most exciting from that point of view, which is a new creation and which will do more blue sky research than has been done until now. So that indicates to me that there will be more research rather than less research going on.
Right, good. Well, so that's the case. But the object of the exercise is obviously to undertake research mode, but there's nothing in the contract, in the agreement, or is there, which compels Capita and FERA to ensure it remains in the UK. What's to stop them, for example, closing research facilities in the UK and obtaining the same from overseas?
You had the previous witnesses' conviction that FERA would form the sort of nucleus for a sort of agricultural science community in the North Country. And I think that's a very compelling story. I think we have some of the best scientists in the world. They are here. Capita is coming here because we are here. They're not going to another part of the world chasing their scientists. That's what makes me confident that they'll stay there.
Well, that may well be the practicality of it, and let us hope that is indeed the achievement. But there's nothing actually in the contract which says that the R&D has to take place in the UK, is there?
There is, I understand, a specific restriction on offshoring scientific capability in the contract, yes.
Okay. Perhaps, along with the other notes that you're sending us, you could detail exactly what
of course I will.
It is. Thank you.
Graham.
Same question I asked the previous panel, but I'd be interested in your response. What will the Institute do that FERA currently does not do?
Well, at the moment, most of FERA's research is applied. What the Institute will be doing is the blue sky research, the more basic research. And I can't tell you exactly what they will do because by the nature of blue sky science, I guess that is, that will pan out when they set the Institute up.
But you expect more blue sky?
Yes, I do.
Right. Whose idea was the Institute? Where did the impetus come from for it? Was it government? Was it Capita? Was it Newcastle University?
My understanding is that it arose out of the discussions between Capita and Newcastle.
So it wasn't a government initiative in that sense. Do you think the new institute will take research away from FERA and DEFRA? Or will there be sort of enhanced research? Will the totality be greater than the parts?
Certainly the direction of travel in terms of the relationship is that it'll be done on site. There will be interaction between the scientists and that it will have an extremely positive effect.
Do you again, you heard the discussion of the previous panel about the governance arrangements. Do you think the government should have a direct appointee on the board that runs the institute rather than it being a secondary relationship?
What was important to us was that we had directors on the board of the joint venture, which after all is the bit which is providing the services to us. Mm-hmm. The institute is the bit which will be doing, as I say, the basic research. It will belong to the joint venture. We felt that was the appropriate structure.
Did you... Organisations, when they have their own boards, can sometimes do very good things, poor things. You don't think the government should have a direct representative on there? Because if you follow the public money through, there is public money in there, isn't there? I mean, do you not think there should be I think a government representative on that board?
As I say, what's really important to me is that we have representation on the board of the joint venture, which is providing the services directly to us. The emergency response, the plant health, and so on. And the joint venture will be controlling the Joint Research Institute. We felt that was adequate and proper and appropriate level of oversight.
Steve. Thank you. Currently, FERA's got an external science panel, and it also makes use of DEFRA's Chief Scientific Advisor to provide independent challenge and advice on the scientific activities of FERA. Where will this independent challenge come from under the new structures?
So the Chief Scientific Advisor will be on the board, and he will provide that oversight.
Okay. So currently there is an external science panel that's made up of quite a wide range of people. Will that still be in place under the new structure?
Yes, it will.
It will. Okay, thank you. Within the contract, what sort of performance indicators are there that are specified in terms of scientific research and development that occurs?
Can I add that to my letter? It's a point of some detail. I think it's important.
Okay. And how will that be measured then, or who will have the role of overseeing that? Will it be an internal thing, or would it be DEFRA?
Oh no, it will certainly be DEFRA.
Okay. And if they...
I'm sorry, it is quite a complicated range of performance indicators, and I think rather than me tell you at length, it is important that I set it out in writing.
No, thank you. Yeah, that would be appreciated. I was just interested then, moving sort of one step away from the actual specifics of those indicators. Who will be measuring them, and what will happen if they fail to meet those indicators?
Oh, sorry, Mr. Smith, I don't think you were here when I went through if there are problems, how they're escalated. But initially, it is handled at the level of the recipient of the service. If things go wrong, it's escalated, and there are several levels of escalation, which ultimately, if everything goes badly wrong, means that the service can either be pulled back into the department in the case of plant health, or they lose the business.
Okay, in 2014, the Public Accounts Committee recommended that the National Audit Office should have access to the information associated with public sector contracts to facilitate parliamentary scrutiny of private sector provision. Has DEFRA followed those recommendations?
Yes, of course they're involved in the process, yes.
Okay.
They will see the final contract.
Okay.
Lord de Mauley, there's quite a lot to follow up from this, and the number of sitting days we have left are very few in this Parliament, so it would be helpful if you could ask your officials to scribble away as soon as possible and get information to us on the outstanding points, because we need to reflect on this within a week or so. But thank you very much for your attendance this morning.
Chairman, thank you. We will start today.
Excellent. The committee is now going into private session. Order.
Committee Room 15, sound. 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 Committee Room 15, sound.